And now we have Ryan Baird from Baird Augustine, and he's going to be interviewing Ben Narasin from Tenacity. Give him a round of applause. Let's go.
You used up all the good questions, and Michael gave you all the good answers. So just whatever he said, we're good. Although I want to answer a bunch of those questions again. So.
Appreciate the time. Would love to start with your investment thesis.
So I've been doing seed investing since seed investing was created around 2007. I started the second institutional seed fund, as far as I know, in the world. Josh Koppelman announced first round capital 1 week before me, which still pisses me off, because if I'd worked a little bit harder, I could have said I was the first. But apparently I was the second. And Josh is great, and we've done business together. I look for, so back to some of the questions, gut versus et cetera, and what you look for and everything else. I need 5 things to make investments. People, great idea, huge market. I need all of them. I can't fund brilliant people. Is this even working? I can't tell. I can't fund brilliant people with mediocre ideas. I've tried that. It doesn't work. I don't do well with pivots. And the worst thing you can do is, I've literally, this is a true story, said to one entrepreneur, "You are phenomenal. I think you're just outrageously great. This idea isn't. And I think you're going to figure that out and do something else. So I'm going to fund you for the next business." 6 months later, he came back and said, "You were right. That idea wasn't any good. So I've got half your money. I want to give it back to you." And I was like, do you not remember the part about how I wanted to fund your second idea? So he went off and thought about things and came back and said, "I couldn't come up with anything. Here's 50 cents on the dollar back," which is the worst possible. Look, I can lose all my money. That's part of being a seed investor. I need a shot at making 100x or more. And I'm not going to get that if you give me a refund. So please keep the refund and keep trying. So I want brilliant, tenacious. I mean, my fund's called Tenacity. If you want to know what I'm really looking for, that's a pretty big clue. It's always funny because I do lots of podcasts and TV and stuff, and I usually will talk about the interesting reality of tenacity. And the worst possible thing. "Well, you're really like me, Ben." "Why is that?" "Well, I'm really tenacious." "I'm sure you are." Now let's figure out how you can prove that to me, because I can tell you what, you're really going to like me I'm married for over 30 years, but let's pretend I was looking for a date. "You're really going to like me because I'm 6'7", played professional basketball, and I'm worth $1 billion. I made all that up, but how do you know? Like, show me the money. Show me the reality of the fact that you can fight through incredibly hard times. But opportunity-wise, I will fund anything in tech except for security, med tech, and crypto. And just want to believe that the company has a shot at being one of the next great public companies. I've got 7 publics in 18 years, I think. I'd like to have a lot more. Obviously, I've funded a lot more than 7 companies, so clearly it doesn't always work out the way you want.
What are some of the biggest lessons that you learned from the companies that actually went public?
Well, first of all, it takes forever. So Amada Health is a company I funded over 12 years ago. They went public about 30 days ago. That was a long journey. I mean, the importance of tenacity, grit, drive, endurance, it's not just a marathon. I mean, I think it's a fair way to start. It's a marathon during which you are fighting a hurdle race, during which you have to have constant sprints. So if you know high intensity interval training, it's not run constantly for 32 miles or however long a marathon is. It's sprint all out for a mile and then jog for 15 minutes and then do it again and again and again and jump over things the whole way while fighting wolves and random people coming out of the wilderness. It's just constantly hard. It is always harder than anybody that wasn't previously an entrepreneur will ever understand or believe. And so fighting through those times is required. I took my company public. We came within 24 hours of missing payroll and going bankrupt. I have never met a successful founder with a major outcome that doesn't have a similar story. You will eventually stare into the valley of death. And you can either jump in that valley and fight through, or you can give up. If you're the second person, I hope to God I never gave you a nickel. Because people that give up are the ones I want to stay as far away from as possible. I can't give up an entrepreneur even if it's certain they're not going to make it. And so entrepreneurs will come to me for advice in all kinds of difficult times, and I try to be as helpful as I can. Even if I'm going to lose all my money, I was an entrepreneur for too long. I mean, you just don't abandon, no man, no woman left behind sort of mindset. If you are going to give your life to be an entrepreneur, you deserve whatever I can give you. But usually what will happen is when times get really hard, I'll get a call, we'll sit down, we'll talk about it. And what I always say, you've got to remember that it is always darkest before it gets even darker. And only then, if you continue to push through, do you have a chance of finding the light. It will always get worse. It is not as bad as you think it is because it's going to be much worse tomorrow. And it's usually the way it is. It just, people have this idealized view of, it's a cognitive bias is a fascinating thing I try to study as much as I can. Success bias. People look at what worked. Oh, I can do that. What about the 1,000 people that tried the same thing? Whoever ran this race or won this race, what about all the ones behind them that lost? Are you going to look at the winner and say, oh, I could have done that. I could have rode harder than that guy. Well, what about all the 19 other teams that rode as hard as they possibly could and still lost? I mean, second place is first loser, right? So, it's very easy for people to look at the shining beacon of success. There's nothing worse. It used to be people would say, well, it's just like Amazon. Oh, really? Uh-huh. Okay, thanks. You pass. Now it's like, well, it's just like Elon Musk. Really? Okay, so you sleep 4 hours a night underneath your desk at all of your jobs and work 7 days a week and you make all your people do that? Well, no, but okay, then shut up. It's not, first of all, you're nothing like him in any possible way, and he's a one of one. You can't solve for a one of one. So I do think it's critically important to try to figure out what, last point, because it is related to the question of what did I learn from this. I learned more from my own IPO than anything else that I need to understand what an entrepreneur needs, not what they want. There's a huge spread. A need, my daughter was a phenomenal runner. She was like undefeated on the peninsula for a very long time. As soon as she went to nationals, she lost immediately to people that look nothing like anybody around here. But fine, genetically better at running than she is by far. They can literally do warm-up leaps over her head. And you know that when you see somebody jumping over your daughter's head in practice that they're going to kick her butt. But the point of this, she would run as hard as she needed to. Now, sometimes she'd get a little comfortable and she'd start to slow down until she saw somebody out of the corner of her eye. And then she would rocket ship ahead. But once she got past the finish line, she was done. Spent, fell on the ground, wallowed around like a turtle. That's what she needed. She might have wanted to have an even better time or run an extra lap. People finish their race when they hit their need. And so it doesn't matter what you want. It matters what you need. And sometimes the reason I took this lesson from my own IPO, someone offered to buy my company weeks before the IPO. I owned 80% of that company and they were going to pay me low end of the IPO range. I would have made a lot more money. But it never even occurred to me to consider it. I was like, absolutely not. Because I needed the validation that I believed would come from taking my company public. And if I can find that in people, look, it was illogical. It wouldn't have taken a lot of work to take out a piece of paper and a pencil and run the numbers. It's a lot more money on this side, but it's a lot less ego. And sadly, that was probably a big part of it for me. And that's whatever it takes to get you motivated. I don't know if it's ego, save the world, make the world a better place, money, power, charitable good. When you figure out what people need, then you can figure out how hard they're going to be willing to fight through those difficult battles to get to that endpoint. And IPO is an extremely difficult endpoint to get to.
Have all of your IPOs been with Silicon Valley founders?
I think so. Well, they may or may not have. Well, there was an Israeli founder, but he was here. Yeah, I think they were all here. And you look at, I travel around the world sometimes speaking on this topic, and everybody wants to figure out how they can be Silicon Valley. And the answer is, you won't be. So, good luck. You need so much. It's not one thing. It's everything. It's not just Stanford and Berkeley and great education. It's everything. It's laws. This is the first state in the nation that disallowed the ability to have a non-compete. In New York, I think you still can enforce a non-compete. You quit your job and you want to go do a startup, good luck with that. They're going to sue you out of existence. Can't do that here. There's so many things. And so I would argue that Silicon Valley is made up of the best entrepreneurs in the world, no matter where they came from. They end up here because they are drawn here the same way the best artists in the world were drawn to Florence during the Renaissance. They want to be amongst the best. And by the way, those are the entrepreneurs I want to fund. If you're an actor, if you're a stage actor, and you don't aspire to Broadway, well, good luck with that. Like what? Your dream is to go to a Chicago playhouse and do a little, rendition of something? It's probably an inappropriate thing to say. Maybe that's perfect for your dream if that's who you are. But I want to fund the person that wants to be on Broadway on that big show and will never stop until they get there. And will they have to spend time in Chicago? Absolutely. Will they have to do Playhouse Theater? Of course they will. Maybe they have to go to Canada. I don't know. But they need to get to the big stage. And this is the big stage for entrepreneurship. And what's amazing, like, look at this. We're in this wonderful home on the water in, a part of Silicon Valley with a bunch of people in a room talking about entrepreneurship. Where else in the world does this happen on a random, Thursday? Love that.
Can you talk about the lessons from some of your biggest losses?
So it wasn't a big loss. I mean, I've been fortunate in that maybe because I'm so obsessive about finding people that refuse to die that my loss ratios are extremely low by venture standards. It's not to say I haven't lost money. I've lost, plenty, but I've made so much more. I'm perfectly happy with that. You have to be willing to lose all your money in order to make 100x on a deal. Mm-hmm. I just had a woman call me 2 weeks ago, and she said, Ben, sorry to make this call. It's been 12 years. It's going to have to get shut down. We got one buyer. They retraded the deal 3 times. There'll be 15, 20 cents on the dollar for the preferred, and I'd put way too much money into the common. I was like, well, tell me what your next thing is. Because I'll tell you, she is one of the most tenacious entrepreneurs I've ever backed. She fought, claw and fang for 12 years in a business that most people would have let go. She always was faithful to her investors. She never screwed anybody. She never took a self-interested term sheet, or she just fought so hard. But I'll tell you, tenacity is important, but it's not enough. Because, I did say to her, take time. You got to have some time to heal. Do whatever you do to find peace, and then come talk to me. Let's figure out what your next thing is. If you don't have a next thing, I've got one for you. I want to back your next business. I've generally found that if you find great founders, you want to stay behind them. I mean, my most valuable company, a company called Rippling. So I funded Parker Conrad and a company called Zenefits. It got to a peak of about $5.5 billion worth of value before Andreessen Horowitz fired him. It's entirely their fault, by the way. They also encouraged the behavior, not explicitly, but implicitly, that got him to the point where he got into some issues. So that business, you know how much I got for that company when my stock got bought? So here's a company where I was one of the very first investors. I paid, modest amount of money. Parker claims at the $5.5 billion round, he was 1,000x return for his first investors. That's not true because he didn't factor in dilution. But it was probably, 200 to 400x. But I always wait till the bitter end. Well, almost always. And so I didn't sell. And then their biggest competitor, TriNet, bought them. And I got a notice by email about what I was going to be paid. 12 cents on the dollar for my original investment, plus a half a share of stock. And I wrote back, are you going to round that up and give me an actual share of stock? And they said, oh, I'm sorry, that's a mistake. We're going to give you 0 shares of stock. So it's like, thanks for rubbing salt in the wound. So I got 12 cents on the dollar for a company that used to be a 400Xer, but I backed his next company on PowerPoint slides alone. In fact, I don't even think he had PowerPoint. I think he just said, Ben, I really need you to back me. I said, okay. And that company is worth $16 billion, and that's a 400, 500X. Great founders. Yeah, I mean, and I did admittedly sell a bunch of my shares, not because I didn't believe in Parker, but I'm running a fund now, and I figured out that in order to run the fund for 3 funds, which is my time horizon, because I want to give it 20 years, 10 years to deploy, 10 years to harvest, that I wanted to put in a GP commit of 10%. Bottom line, that was 100% of my liquid net worth, more than 100%. So there's this thing called cashless carry. How many people here understand venture? So I don't go too far in the weeds. Okay, fine. And so I decided to do that. That got me to over 50% of my liquid net worth, but no longer 100. But I really wanted to get to 50 because I am married and I do have children and we've done really well. And my wife does not want to know anything about my business, but I want to be able to tell her I'm doing the right thing for us. And so I wanted to get to 50%. You don't get there by selling your losers. So I sold some of my Rippling at $2 billion. I don't regret it. It was a lifestyle decision, but I certainly financially would have been better off waiting for it to go up 8 times more and put that in the bank. So I should have mortgaged my house.
How many more years would have been to get the 8 times more?
Oh, like a year and a half. Almost nothing. Like I sold it, the round went off at $1.2 billion. I sold at $2 billion. I thought I was fancy because I got that premium. Literally 6 months later, $6 billion. Then they tendered at $12 billion. Unlimited demand, by the way, and now it's at 16. It's like, ugh, I don't even like to think about it. I do still own some shares. I was just checking today, but not enough to. When I talked to Parker, I was like, look, I do not doubt you're going to continue to crush it. I'm selling like 90% of my shares. I'm pretty sure I'm going to make as much on the remaining 10% as I made on the first 90, but I need to be comfortable when I start this fund that I've got the wherewithal to do it. And it's a lot more money than I expected, and I've done well, but like not in a liquid way where I'm just sitting on my, and it's not like I'm Scrooge McDuck, with a nice vault full of gold. Wouldn't that be fun? Be Scrooge McDuck? Can you imagine Scrooge McDuck in the current world with gold over 3,000 an ounce? Wow. He would certainly be the richest duck/entity on the planet. He'd be better than the Sultan of Brunei.
So you're finding these tenacious entrepreneurs. How do you keep doing it over and over again?
So it's funny, I was talking to one of my potential LPs. I'm fundraising for Fund 2, and so I do lots of meetings, and I was telling him that over 2023 and 2024, I saw 10,000 pitches, and I funded 6. Those are the numbers. And you can see him sort of like, what? You have a question? He's like, I'm just trying to do the math. Like, how do you see that many companies? Like, what is that like? I'm like, okay, well, there's 2 things. First of all, a pitch can be 1 minute long, 3 minutes long, or an hour long. So it's all of that. Secondly, in 2023, we saw a lot of online demo days. In 2020, it was 8,000 pitches in 2023, 2,000 in 2024, because I shifted back to this. I will go to anything. My wife would say, I will go to the opening of an envelope. If they're going to be entrepreneurs and VCs and people that might be able to help me find the next great deal, or I guess fund my fund in theory. And I said, what you need to understand about me is there is literally nothing else in my life. Okay, there was my family, and there still is my family, but we're empty nest. Okay, my kids are all out of the house. My wife's wonderful. We've been married for over 30 years. She puts up with this. I mean, just this tiny little window into me, you got to be thinking, man, she's amazing. Like, I used to, when I had my company I took public, once my wife came to the office, and people were like, wait, what? You're his wife? You're so normal. Like, how do you deal with that? She's awesome. I was so lucky. I'm way above my pay grade. It took me 9 months to get my first date, but I also am very tenacious. So the only thing I do that isn't around entrepreneurship and finding founders and finding other investors, and I play Call of Duty. And we did put in a pickleball court, so that happens like once every 2 weeks. But net, this is what I love. I spent 25 years as an entrepreneur myself, where I only cared about 2 things. I will say politically correctly, dating, and my businesses. And then I was fortunate enough to get liquidity and retired for about 6 years, apparently, according to my wife, and thought, oh, this is my chance to become a well-rounded, normal person. So I made friends, and I took up golf, and I took up tennis, and I had hobbies. And later, when I moved here, I'm like, that was all a waste of time. I'm still interested only in the same 2 things I used to be interested in, except change dating for the one woman I'm involved with and the family that came from that, and my entrepreneurs instead of my own businesses. I love it. It's an unlimited amount of new, interesting things you get to learn and experience, and it's just awesome. I find I'm actually fine for any party around this subject and horrific at any social event that isn't like this. My wife, it drives her insane. We go to whatever random party with our friends, which really means her friends and their husbands. And look, I'm friendly with all those husbands. They're very nice guys. But net, I last between 15 and 30 minutes per party because I go talk to the guys and I can get the talk around startups for about 5-10 minutes. And then it changes to that guy that threw that ball. I'm like, oh, Jesus. So I have to leave. Then I go talk to the wives. And the wives are usually fine with me for a very short period of time until it becomes obvious I'm not really that welcome there for the conversation they're having. So then I go to my wife and say, I'm sorry, I have to walk home or take an Uber, or can you get a ride? She's like, I can't believe you're so antisocial. I'm like, I am social all day long, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend I care about whatever random sport this particular group of guys wants to talk about. I've got friends that play golf all the time. Like, oh, really? I played golf for a short period of time, didn't take. I've been to every sporting event of any major consequence at least once and always regretted it. It's just not where I live. So because I love it, it's not work. That old saying, do what you love and you never work a day in your life. Who here has heard Charlie Munger on the podcast, the only one I think he's ever on, which was the guys that do like the 3-hour piece on companies, Acquired, right? So they went to a dinner with Charlie Munger. They got to record it for like an hour and 20 minutes. Within a couple of weeks to a couple of months before he died, the guy was 99 years old, totally cogent, totally into his event. supposedly stayed at these parties later than the people he invited, all about business. I'm like, there's the new standard for me. That's it. I got to get to 100 and still be like that. He's just so awesome. And I'm pretty sure Charlie's not hanging out putting or watching his favorite, whatever, Nebraska team throw balls through hoops.
So you're a venture capitalist. Do you also invest in other asset classes, or you're just completely obsessed with VC?
Yeah, it's just this. I don't even invest my own money in anything anymore, except that, well, I did one investment since I started the fund, because we're a seed and pre-seed fund, and a young entrepreneur, well, he's not young anymore, but I've known him for 30 years. He was young when I met him, named Moonjal Shah, started a company called Hippocratic, which is an AI business that creates digital nurses to do follow-ups after you leave the hospital. And for a while, I was trying to recruit him to be a venture partner, and we would talk about it. We would get together every week. It took me about 18 months to make my first generative AI investment, because I really needed to have a point of view as to how you build a defensive moat, and everybody's using the same engine, and why will it matter? By the way, ChatGPT is really wretched garbage. I mean, I yell at it all the time now. It makes the same mistake over and over again. I say, I can't believe you made this mistake. Can you please not do that? Oh, you're so right. You're so right to be upset. I will not do that again. And literally the very next moment, same damn mistake. And I'm like, what happened? And last time I was yelling at him, I'm like, whatever it is. I was like, how do I punish you? Like, how can I make there be a consequence? You keep saying you won't make this mistake, and then you make the same damn mistake over and over again. And it's like, well, if you are unhappy with me, then you'll start using another service, and that would make me sad. And I was like, not good enough. Like, how do I electrocute you? How do I really find a way to cause you digital pain? Like, what's the equivalent of that? Like in a Black Mirror episode, if you ever saw the one where the woman has herself cloned as a digital, that's such a great episode. It's so evil, but she figured out how to motivate herself to do the work. So I totally lost track of the question on that one.
No worries. We can keep moving on. Can you talk about one of your more recent investments and why you made it?
Sure. I've only made one investment this year so far, so I'm behind even my slow pace, which is a company called Wildfire Robotics out of Canada. It is as the name would suggest, a robot to fight wildfires. It's really cool. Picture a snake made of 3 hoses with a raised up head. They say snakes don't snag. So they use sort of natural forces to figure out, how do you get this robot into the wild? Now, Canada, you're talking about severe terrain, deep woods, all this stuff. And so they've signed a contract with the Alberta Fire Department already, or with the Wildfire Group. Apparently, I did not know this, although I guess in hindsight it's obvious, fires are weakest at night, right? Less wind, sun for heat, all that stuff. But humans can't fight fires at night because it's dangerous. It's already dangerous enough, but now you can't see where you're going. So what they're doing to prove is that they can send the robot in at night. It fights the fire, it pushes it back, and it brings in all the hoses. So when the fire crew goes in, their equipment's already there. The fire has been abated somewhat. It's so awesome. And I love when you find underappreciated industries that haven't been touched. Like, remember when I was a kid, the movie The Land That Time Forgot, and these people stumble into a area where there's dinosaurs, as if there were ever a cohabitation between any of our ancestors and dinosaurs, and there they are in this secret valley, probably in New Zealand. So this is like that. They haven't touched firefighting equipment since the 70s. I mean, 50 years and no technology innovation. And I wouldn't say that every place on the planet has wildfire issues, but a lot do, and they're always worse. I mean, obviously we saw that recently in California. So I think the opportunity here is huge. The entrepreneur is great. His co-founder is also great in a totally different way, hardcore scientist. But when Michael was making the point on storytelling, you cannot undervalue storytelling. I used to think I cared too much because I used to be a writer, but you can't care too much. Storytelling is how you raise money. It's how you recruit talent. It's how you get customers. It's how you do almost everything. And you've got to be able to do it. You've got to have that skill. And it's interesting because as soon as I interviewed his co-founder, and they warned me, he's very thoughtful. Well, that's just, and I was like, I went back to him and said, I'm glad you warned me. And please make sure that man never, ever, ever goes to a VC meeting or any of your customers. He can be in there for the diligence. When you're talking about the scientific diligence where they send in the brilliant Forrest Basket type to analyze the technology, fine. Geek to geek, nerd to nerd, all good. Never let this human being stand on stage and talk about your business. You're the front man. He's the inside man. Keep it that way forever, or you will destroy your business by letting him see the light of day. But it's a great team as long as they keep their rules.
It's amazing how important the pitch is. A lot of people think it's just for raising money, but it's actually for recruiting, for getting media, for raising from the next investor.
All of it. I mean, think about when you're recruiting talent. So a startup, no matter how well funded, does not have enough money. You're not matching anybody's pay unless you're, if you're at Zuck's level, then sure. But you think you're going to hire somebody away from any of the big tech companies? By the way, you shouldn't even really bother. But even from a normal company, a buddy of mine used to work at Activision Blizzard. And he would always reach out to me when he got an offer. He said, what do you think of this company? I don't know. What do you think of their investors? Oh, they're good, they're bad, they're whatever. And then one day he said, what do you think of this company, Roblox? I'm like, yeah, that's a good one. So he called me and he said, I'm really struggling here. I'm like, why? He said, well, I'm taking a 50% pay cut or more, probably more like 75. And they've got a good option package. And I'm just trying to figure out the right way to help, how to basically negotiate for some more money. I'm like, dude, you're thinking about this all wrong. Forget the money. The money, what you want to get from 50 cents on the dollar to 60? Go for more options. Like, you got to think about these jobs as a VC. Like, think like a VC. How do I make a 10x on what I gave up? If you were making $1 million a year and now you're making $500,000, which, by the way, very few startups can pay, particularly if they're early stage, none can. Well, it's going to take you 10 years to get to liquidity. You left $5 million on the table. Are you going to make $50 million from the stock when it works out? If you think that's realistic, if it works, by the way, the other side is zero. That's a worthwhile bet. If you think you're going to make 10 million, why would you take that risk for a 2x over 10 years? That's silly. So he did take the job. He did listen to me, and he's been ever thankful and is a much larger LP of mine now, because that stock, when that company went public like a year or two later, far more valuable than his extra 10 cents on the dollar. So, but having said that, I know David. He's awesome. He's a great storyteller. He was just on NPR yesterday because a while back they got attacked for safety issues. He's really good at staying on point, telling the story. He was able to recruit this guy. He didn't do that by like, hey man, you want a job? We pay a lot less. No, if you don't buy the vision, you're never going to get those people. The people that don't buy your vision aren't going to make that change. Customers, the same. I don't like Vinod Khosla personally, but I really respect when he was a young person at Sun, how he was able to win customers. There's a great story of a friend of mine was like this fourth person there or something. So they were bidding on a deal against, let's call it IBM, some big Midwestern group. And this is also, by the way, definitively Tenacity. That's why I love it. It's too bad he's become who he is now. But you could say the thing about Giuliani or many people. Trump's always been who Trump is, so he never changed. Anyway, so they lose the deal. Big company in the Midwest says, sorry, we're going with IBM. And he's furious. So he jumps on a plane, flies out, dials for dollars, literally just will not leave the building until he gets to a decision maker. Gets up to the office of the decision maker. Why did we lose to IBM? You know our product's better. Yeah, it is better. But you're a startup. We don't know if you're going to be around. We can't take that risk. Tell you what we'll do. We'll escrow the code. What do you mean? We will escrow 100% of our source code. If we go out of business, you own everything. They got the deal because he figured out a way in. Partially the story, partially the tenacity. He got it done. Just getting it done is rules number 1, 2, and 3. Like, it doesn't matter what your excuses are. That just means you didn't figure out how to get it done. I'm not saying everything is achievable, but if you didn't try, it's like, what was the guy that used to say over 90% of putts that are short don't go in? Like, or shots that you don't make don't go in the loop.
Yeah.
You got to try. And a lot of that try, you got to tell a story that increases your conversion rate when you do, right? And so I don't think you look at the people that have raised stunning amounts of money, sometimes to great success, sometimes to hellish failure, great storytellers. Think about WeWork.
Yeah.
I was a great storyteller. Judge the company however you want, but what he was able to achieve along the way, I think it was a whack job, but sometimes it takes a messiah complex. I do think and this sort of goes back to your question on IPOs a little bit, to be truly successful as an entrepreneur, you have to be either arrogant, insane, or something else, because you have to get to the level that I think of as the pinnacle, to get to that multi-billion-dollar IPO. You had to say no to hundreds of millions of dollars, single-digit billions of dollars. You had to sit there and say, I am not willing to become worth hundreds of millions of dollars by taking your offer. Wow, that's either arrogance or insanity or some belief far beyond anything that most human beings possess, because it goes back to want or need. I'll tell you one more story about want or need, just because I love stories because they are truth. I had a founder, sold to Google for $555 million. So we're sitting down afterwards. It's funny. I meet him at this airport because he flies helicopters. And I pull into the airport and there's this brand new McLaren with that fancy black carbon paint, that makes you look like, I don't know what, a rap star or something. And I'm like, oh God, that's gotta be his car. And I go and I'm like, Greg, that's your car. He's, oh yeah, it's great. And then he tells me why it's the right one to buy, because it's not the most expensive one, it's the second most expensive one. And so some people that want these will buy his used one at a very limited amount of a discount because they really want to be in the game, but they can't. I was like, yeah, whatever, dude. You made plenty of money. Just, it's a car. Fine. It's a depreciating asset. Anyway, I was like, so tell me why you think we ended up with 555. He said, I think Tony Fadell, who was running Nest at the time, was playing 3D chess and I was playing 2D chess. It's like, huh. So it's an interesting way to think about it. Would it also be possible that they hit your number? I said, yeah, actually my partner and I talked about it and we decided if they got to this number, we would sell. Okay, well, I think that's the real answer. I don't think Tony was playing. I think he could have been playing checkers. He hit your number, you sold. Why is that story so tragic when the guy that sold that company probably owned half of it and is doing exceptionally well? He later found the document inside of Google of why they needed to buy his company and why they should be prepared to pay up to $1.25 billion for it. So he left $700 million on the table. And personally, I'd rather we have it than Google does, particularly Tony, because that guy is not fun to work with. So you've got to have, his need was 555. A more limitless ambition would have paid him almost triple that. Yeah. And by the way, when they write the memo at 1.25, does that mean they don't? I had an entrepreneur once, he was offered like 800 and I gave him all these strategies for how he could get the price up. No, Ben, I don't, no, it's different this time. Really? There's no sun in the sky anymore. The water's not wet. It's different than every other deal I've ever seen in my entire, however many, 25 years as an entrepreneur, 18 years as an investor. Interesting. It's all changed now. Okay, good to know. Young person that literally your entire business career before this was you owned a restaurant which went bankrupt. But I'm glad you know it's different. Okay, so 800 million is the offer. I can't get him to budge. But you know who did get him to budge? The head of NEA. He gave him a term sheet at 3.5 billion. By the way, the other thing was the entrepreneur said to me, no, I'm working with the founder. He tells me this is the most he can pay. And quote, I believe him. Did you tell you the check's in the mail too? So it was like, okay, good to know you're not at all naive. So anyway, but the $3.5 billion term sheet, all of a sudden he had some new confidence. He went back and said, I can't do this deal. I'm going to take the 3.5. Miraculously, price increased. Sold for a little shy of 3 billion. Really? You mean, I'm confused because that's the most he could pay, right? You promised me that. Oh, it was different this time. So it must have been, it was the most he could pay until all of a sudden he could pay more because it was never different at all. He doesn't remember any of that conversation, of course, but in fairness, even 800 was still, this guy had huge, the ego on this guy was outrageous. Still is. He's going to be part of the Trump administration, in fact. How appropriate.
Amazing. Thank you, Ben. Everyone give Ben a round of applause.